The flowers alone had cost $60,000. Imported orchids, blush peonies, hydrangeas hand-dyed to match the exact Pantone of the mayor's daughter's eyes. Every petal was perfect. Every seat in the private cathedral occupied by someone powerful enough to move markets or rewrite laws. The wedding of Liam Strathmore was not a celebration. It was an event, an alliance. The final act in a courtship carefully orchestrated by PR teams, family legacies, and billion-dollar whispers. Liam stood at the altar, still as marble, dressed in a custom ivory tuxedo tailored in Milan. His dark blonde hair slicked back, hands clasped in front of him, his jaw locked, his eyes trained on the massive doors at the back of the aisle. Behind those doors waited Camille Halstead, his bride. Flawless, educated, the daughter of a man who would likely become governor next spring. She was everything his empire needed. The cathedral was silent. Only the string quartet whispered softly into the rafters, and Liam's thoughts filled in the rest. He wasn't nervous. He didn't get nervous. What he felt was something else, a quiet pressure, a humming beneath his ribs, like a truth trying to escape. But he swallowed it, like he always had, like he always would, until the crash. It wasn't loud, just sharp, sudden. The massive cathedral doors flew open, not with ceremony, but desperation. Gasps rippled across the pews. And then she appeared. A woman, young, barefoot, her dress soaked from rain, clinging to her like it didn't belong to her at all. Her long dark hair was wet and tangled, plastered against her cheek. She clutched something to her chest. Not something. Someone. A child. Maybe 3 years old. Pale skin. Dark curls. Eyes wide as moons. The entire cathedral seemed to inhale, then hold it. Security hesitated. Liam didn't move. He couldn't. Because the moment he saw her, the humming in his ribs became a roar. He knew her. Not from business. Not from politics. From before. From everything. Her name was Raya. And she was supposed to be dead. The child stirred, pressing his small face into Raya's collarbone. Her voice was broken glass when she spoke. "You don't get to pretend I don't exist, Liam. Not anymore." Camille stood frozen halfway down the aisle, veil trembling in her hands. Her father stood with his mouth slightly open, already calculating how to erase this moment from the headlines. Liam didn't move. His body was stone, but inside, he was unraveling. 3 years ago, he had walked away from Raya in the middle of a storm. She had nothing. A struggling artist living in a downtown squat, too proud to take money, too soft to survive the world he moved in. He had offered her an escape. She had refused. Said she didn't want to be his secret. Said she wasn't a charity case. So he left. And 2 weeks later, she vanished. Her number disconnected. Her address abandoned. No trace. He searched. Quietly. Hired people. Nothing. Now she was standing at the end of his aisle. Soaked. Shaking. Holding a child with his mouth. His jawline. His eyes. Raya took one step forward. Security moved. But Liam raised his hand, a silent command that made them freeze. "I didn't come here to ruin your life," she said. "I came to give you a choice." Her voice cracked. "I came to tell you that this," she looked down at the child, "this isn't going away just because you pretend it never happened." The boy looked up then, just for a second, and Liam's world collapsed. Because those were his eyes. The exact color. The exact shape. The same quiet question behind them. Liam didn't remember walking down the aisle. He didn't remember dropping Camille's hand, or the way her veil crumpled when it slipped from her shoulders. He only remembered standing in front of Raya. Rain still clung to her lashes. Her breath was shaking. Her free hand balled into a fist. "I didn't want to do this here," she whispered. "But you left me no choice." Liam looked down at the boy. He didn't ask how. He didn't ask when. He just asked one thing. "What's his name?" Her eyes glistened. "River." And Liam Strathmore, billionaire, CEO, the man who never let go of control, felt everything he had built begin to tilt sideways. Because this wasn't a scandal. This was his son, and the woman he had buried in silence was standing in front of him, asking if he still remembered how to be human. Nobody spoke. Cameras had stopped recording. Guests frozen in their seats. The mayor's daughter stood mid-aisle, arms limp at her sides, her designer veil draped like a ghost across the marble floor. And at the altar, Liam Strathmore, billionaire, CEO, groom, stood face to face with the woman no one invited. The woman everyone thought was dead, holding the boy no one knew existed. He couldn't look away from River. Couldn't unsee it. The curve of the mouth, the crease between the eyebrows, the faint storm in those sea-gray eyes. All of it was him, as undeniable as blood. He had seen this kind of moment before. In business. In takeovers. The instant just before everything collapses. He just never imagined he'd be on the side being taken. Raya's hand trembled as she shifted River's weight in her arms. Her voice cracked, not from performance, but from the weight of it all finally snapping. "I didn't come to fight," she said. "I came because he kept asking where his dad was." A ripple passed through the crowd. The mayor's face twisted into practiced rage. Camille's knuckles clenched at her sides. But no one dared speak yet. Because Liam, the man they all counted on for poise, strategy, power, hadn't said a word. He was still staring at his son like the word had never had meaning until this moment. River looked up at him, then hit again in Raya's collar. Liam blinked. Once, then again. The world reassembled around him. He turned, not to Raya, to Camille. She stood still, heartbroken pride etched across her porcelain face. She looked like a statue about to crack. "I didn't know," Liam said, his voice low and hoarse. "About the child. About any of this. You didn't ask," she whispered, her voice tight. "You never ask when something might cost you." A low murmur stirred among the guests. Camille turned to her father, her posture collapsing like a house of cards. "I told you this wasn't real," she said. "You said it didn't have to be." And then she walked out. No screaming, no scene, just a woman reclaiming her exit. The mayor started after her, furious, red-faced, but the press was already moving, whispers swirling, phones raised in trembling hands. Security tried to manage it, but it was too late. The story had been born. Liam turned back to Raya. "You should go," he said softly. "Now, before they eat you alive." Raya blinked. "That's it? You're just going to pretend it didn't happen?" Again, he stepped forward, his jaw clenched. "No, I'm going to walk out of here with you." The room shifted. Gasps. Cameras. People rising from their seats. Raya's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" Liam's voice never wavered. "Something I should have done years ago." He took off his tuxedo jacket, dropped it over her shoulders, lifted his son into his arms. River didn't cry. He simply stared, as if waiting for the memory to form. And Liam whispered, "I'm here now." They walked out of the cathedral together, past stunned guests, past shattered expectations, past the empire he'd spent a decade building. The story broke within minutes. Runaway groom walks out with mystery woman holding a child, shocks governor's family. Liam didn't speak to reporters. He didn't explain. He just kept walking. They made it back to his townhouse just before the rain returned. Raya sat on the edge of the couch, arms around herself. River napped beside her, curled up like a question no one had yet answered. Liam paced the room like it still belonged to someone else. "You disappeared," he said finally. 3 years. Nothing. You walked out on me, Liam," she said. "You offered me hush money. You tried to end it like I was an inconvenience." He stopped pacing. "I didn't know you were pregnant." "I didn't know either. Not at first." Silence. "I wanted to tell you," she added. "But when I called, your number changed. Your email bounced. I wasn't even sure you were still in the country." Liam sat down slowly, head in his hands. The weight of everything, the press, the fallout, the child asleep in the next room, settled across his shoulders like iron. Raya stood. "If you want a test," she said, "you'll get one. If you want a lawyer." "I don't," Liam interrupted. She paused. "I just want to know him," he said. "Not as a scandal. Not as leverage. As my son." She stared at him for a long moment, measuring him. Then she said the one thing he didn't expect. "Then show me you're not the man who left." By sunrise, the headlines weren't just viral. They were everywhere. Billionaire groom walks out on mayor's daughter mid-ceremony. Who is the mysterious woman with his alleged son? Love child or blackmail? Inside the Strathmore scandal. Liam stood at the edge of his penthouse balcony, phone silent, inbox overflowing, a PR team on standby for statements he hadn't approved. The city moved below him like nothing had changed, but his world had tilted so far off its axis, he wasn't sure if anything would ever straighten again. Inside, Raya fed River at the kitchen counter. Quiet. No accusations. No noise. Like she'd already lived through the worst of it, and now she was just watching him catch up. He hadn't slept. Not because of shame. but because for the first time in years, he'd looked into a child's eyes and seen something real and known that all the empires in the world couldn't fix what he almost missed. Still, something kept clawing at him. A detail, a memory, a gap in the timeline that didn't make sense. He turned from the window and stepped inside. "You said you tried to call me," he said carefully. "After you found out you were pregnant." Raya nodded. "I did. You were already gone. Gone. Your number was disconnected. I emailed. It bounced back. When I checked your company's site, it said you'd relocated overseas. I thought you were running. I thought you made a choice." Liam's brow furrowed. That wasn't true. He had kept the same number for 5 years. Hadn't relocated until long after. No one had instructed a contact change on his accounts. Unless someone had intercepted it. He grabbed his phone, dialed fast. The voice on the other end answered after 2 rings. Calm, polished. Julian, his personal assistant, his gatekeeper, the man who had been at his side for nearly a decade. "Julian, I need to ask you something." "Of course, sir." 3 years ago, did anyone contact you looking for me?" "A woman. Name was Raya." There was a pause. "Too long." Then, "I don't recall. We get so many inquiries." Liam's voice darkened. "Don't lie to me." Julian exhaled. "Sir, at the time, you were engaged in a delicate merger. There were photos of you and her online. Articles speculating. The investors didn't like it. You told me to manage distractions. So I filtered incoming messages." Liam's blood turned cold. "You filtered her." "I deleted 1 voicemail. Maybe 2. She sounded emotional. It was easier." Liam's fist slammed into the desk. "You erased my child." A heavy silence. Julian didn't answer. He didn't need to. The betrayal was complete. "I want your resignation in my inbox within the hour," Liam said, voice like steel. "And if I find out you buried anything else from me, I'll see you blacklisted in every executive office on this coast." He hung up. Raya stood by the kitchen now, arms crossed, watching. "You didn't know," she said. "No," he replied, throat tight. "But I should have. I should have questioned why it got so quiet. I should have looked harder." Raya's expression softened, just slightly. "You tried." He nodded. "I sent someone to your building. They said you'd moved. No trace. No forwarding. I was in a shelter by then," she whispered. "I didn't want you to find me. Not if you were only coming to say goodbye." River tugged at her sleeve. Raya bent to kiss his forehead. Liam watched them both and felt something inside him snap back into place. Not clean. Not perfect. But human. "I'm not leaving again," he said. "You can't fix this with money," Raya warned. "I'm not trying to." "Then what are you doing?" He didn't answer right away. He walked over, sat beside River, looked him in the eye. "I'm learning his world," Liam said quietly. "So maybe one day, I can earn a place in it." Raya didn't smile, but she didn't stop him either. That afternoon, Liam held a press conference. No teleprompter, no team, no spin. He stood alone, faced the cameras, and told the truth. Yes, the woman was someone he had loved. Yes, the child was his. No, he had not known. Yes, he was taking responsibility. And no, he would not be accepting further questions. When he walked off that stage, his phone buzzed with texts from board members, investors, journalists, and opportunists. But one stood out. It was from Camille. "You did the right thing, even if it destroyed everything we built. And beneath it, but maybe you weren't meant to build with me." He didn't respond. He just closed the message, then walked back into the apartment where his son was drawing spaceships on the kitchen table. And the woman he never stopped loving was watching him like she was waiting to see if he'd disappear again. He didn't. Not this time. The rain had stopped, but the air inside Liam's penthouse felt heavier than ever. Raya sat curled on one side of the couch, wrapped in an oversized sweater that once belonged to him, her bare feet tucked beneath her. One hand rested protectively on River's back as he slept, tucked up beside her like he'd always belonged there. Liam stood across the room, arms crossed, his jaw tight with 100 thoughts crashing at once. He didn't want to push, but he needed answers. "Why now?" he asked finally, his voice low, steady. Raya didn't flinch. She reached into the old leather bag she never let out of sight and pulled out a folded envelope, soft from being handled too many times. She held it out to him. "I wrote this 5 months ago. Meant to send it." He took it without opening it. His name was written across the front in her careful handwriting. "What stopped you?" She hesitated. Her fingers curled tighter around the strap of the bag. "I thought I was dying." Liam froze. Raya exhaled, voice tight. I collapsed at a shelter. They said it was autoimmune, rare, fast-moving. If I didn't get treatment, it could become irreversible. He moved toward her. Slowly. And you didn't think to call me? I thought about it, she said. Over and over. But then I'd remember how you looked the day you left. Cold. Final. Like we were a mistake you couldn't risk repeating. Her voice cracked, just slightly. You think I wanted to crawl back with a kid and a diagnosis and a sob story? I knew exactly what it would look like. A desperate woman begging a billionaire for scraps. Liam sat on the edge of the coffee table, elbows on his knees. You wouldn't have been begging, he said. You would have handed me a check, she whispered. And I would have hated you for it. Liam didn't argue. Because deep down, she was right. He watched her now, the way she kept her arms wrapped around herself even in his home. Like she didn't quite believe she was safe yet. So why crash the wedding? He asked quietly. She looked away. I didn't plan to. I was going to leave that letter with your name on it and disappear. But I saw you, standing there, smiling like none of it had ever happened. And something in me just broke. Liam's voice barely rose above a whisper. You came to give him to me. Raya's jaw tightened. I couldn't take the chance I'd die and no one would know who he was. Who you were. Her eyes glistened now. I didn't do it for me. I did it for him. Liam turned toward River, fast asleep. Small chest rising and falling like waves. You were alone, he said. I still am, she whispered. You're not, Liam replied. He looked back at her, and for the first time, he didn't see the girl who'd once refused his world. He saw the woman who'd kept a child alive, alone, with nothing but fear and instinct, and somehow raised someone kind. He reached for her hand, gently, not possessively. If you'll let me, Raya. I'll stay. She didn't speak, but she didn't pull away. When River stirred and murmured in his sleep, both of them moved at once, turning toward him in unison. And that was the moment. No words, no promises. Just a shared breath, one quiet motion that said everything. Raya looked back at him. You still breathe like him, she said softly. Liam blinked. What? She gave the faintest smile. River, you both exhale the same way. Like the world's too much, but you're not ready to let it go. Liam looked down at his son again. For the first time, he didn't feel like a stranger in his own home. He felt like a father. The next morning, Liam was already dressed before the sun rose. Raya hadn't woken yet. River curled against her side, his tiny hand resting on the hem of her sweater like an anchor. Liam stood in the doorway a moment too long, watching the quiet peace of it, like it might disappear if he blinked. Then he grabbed his phone, made a call, and headed out. He had a meeting to attend, not with his board, not with the press, with the man who orchestrated the wedding he never wanted, Governor Charles Halstead, Camille's father. The mayor's private office smelled like money and victory. Trophies lined the shelves. Awards. Endorsements. A photo of Liam and Camille, smiling at a fundraiser like a polished power couple. It felt fake now, like a set piece from a show Liam never meant to star in. Halstead barely looked up from his desk when Liam entered. Well, if it isn't the man who made a circus out of my daughter's wedding, he muttered, flipping through papers. Liam didn't sit. I want to know when you found out, he said. The governor raised an eyebrow. You'll have to be more specific. Don't waste my time. Her name was Raya. My son is named River. You knew, didn't you? A beat. Then Halstead leaned back, exhaling through his nose. She reached out, he admitted. Months ago, one of my aides flagged it. And you didn't tell me? Liam's voice sharpened. She was unstable. A threat to your image. You were about to marry into a political dynasty, Liam. I did what was necessary to protect the alliance. Liam's jaw clenched. She wasn't a threat. She was the mother of my child. Halstead stood now, calm but calculating. And do you think the voters would have cared about that distinction? An unwed billionaire father with a homeless ex-girlfriend and a surprise child? That story would have buried you and Camille. I had a right to know. You had a role to play, the governor snapped. And for what it's worth, you played it well. Liam stepped forward. You deleted a life to secure a press headline. I buried a distraction, Halstead said coldly. So you could become something more. Liam stared at the man, the father of the woman he almost married, and realized he wasn't looking at a politician. He was looking at a grave digger. Not of bodies, of truths. You don't have to worry about my image anymore, Liam said, voice tight. Or your daughter's. I'm out. Halstead's smile barely twitched. Oh, Liam, you may have walked out of that wedding, but your name is still on everything. My daughter's campaign, my donor network, My legacy. Liam's next words came out like a vow. Then I'll burn the legacy. Back in the car, Liam sat in silence, the city blur flashing past the windows. It wasn't just Raya who had been silenced. It was River, a child, erased before he ever had a chance to be known. Liam hadn't missed the moment. It had been taken from him, on purpose, by people who claimed they were protecting him. But Liam Strathmore didn't need protection anymore. He needed control, and he was going to get it back, one broken alliance at a time. At home, Raya met him at the door. "Where were you?" she asked. He looked at her, tired, steady, burning a bridge I should have never crossed. She didn't ask for details. Not yet. She just reached behind her and pulled River gently into view. The boy blinked up at him, quiet, waiting. And for once, Liam didn't feel like a man being ambushed by the past. He felt like a man ready to claim the future. 2 days later, the letter came by courier. No knock, no warning, just a thick gold-trimmed envelope placed neatly at the door of Liam's penthouse like a wedding invitation that had lost its way. Raya opened it while Liam was in the shower. The paper was expensive, the font serifed and cold. She didn't read it twice. She didn't need to, because she already knew what it was. A motion for full custody, filed on Liam's behalf, signed by a name she didn't recognize. The law firm wasn't his, but the governor's logo was embossed faintly in the corner. Her hand shook as she placed the papers on the table and stepped back. Her breath caught somewhere between fury and fear. By the time Liam came out of the bathroom, toweling off his hair, she was standing at the window, arms folded, barely breathing. He paused. "Raya." She didn't answer right away. She just pointed to the table. He picked up the papers. "Read them." His entire posture shifted. "I didn't authorize this," he said immediately. "No." Her voice was sharp. "Because your name is on every page." Liam flipped through the packet, his jaw tightening. "This isn't my lawyer. I fired everyone tied to Halstead." "Well, he's still fighting for control," she snapped. "And it looks like he's using you to get it." River appeared in the hallway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Liam gently stepped between the child and attention, crouching down. "Hey, buddy, why don't you go draw something for me?" River nodded, wandered back toward the living room, unaware his future had just been threatened on paper. Liam stood, holding the packet like it might ignite in his hands. "I'll fix this." Raya's voice was low, bitter. "You're not the one they'll come after." He looked at her. "They won't touch him." "They'll try," she whispered. "And you know it." Her voice cracked as she continued. "They'll paint me as unstable, sick, unfit. They'll twist the truth. They'll bring up shelters, miss checkups, everything I did just to keep him alive." Liam moved closer. "Then we fight it together." Raya stared at him, a breath hitching in her chest. "You really want to go to war with the governor over me?" "No," he said. "I want to go to war for my son." That stopped her, softened her, because for a moment, she saw the boy she once believed had died inside the man. Liam reached for his phone. "I'm calling in a lawyer of my own, one who doesn't answer to anyone but me." "And what if this goes public?" Raya asked. "It already is." He dialed, turned away from her as he stepped into the other room. And for a brief, breathless moment, Raya was alone, not in a mansion, not in silence, alone in the terrifying truth that this man, this empire, might fight for her now. But it had taken everything to get here, and it could all be undone by one signature. That night, Liam released a statement, not to the press, not to the media, to the people who mattered. He posted a photo, himself, kneeling beside River, a crayon sketch between them. The caption was just one sentence. "Some things matter more than power. This is one of them." No hashtags, no branding, just truth. Within hours, it went viral. But Liam didn't check the numbers. He wasn't watching clicks. He was watching the front door, waiting for the next hit, because the battle had begun. And he wouldn't lose this one, not when it was the only fight that had ever meant something. The custody hearing loomed like a second storm. 6 days. 6 days until lawyers would argue over a child who hadn't asked for any of it. Every night, Liam and Raya sat across from each other at the dining table, reviewing court language, character affidavits, timelines, and witness prep. The legal team he'd hired was precise, tactful, and surgically aggressive. But what Raya feared most wasn't the courtroom. It was the part that wouldn't be said aloud. Because silence is where powerful men do their cleanest damage. On the 4th morning, the concierge buzzed up. "A woman dropped something off for Ms. Varon," he said. "No return address. She said you'd understand." Raya descended to the lobby barefoot, half awake, only to be handed a slim cream envelope. Heavy, expensive, with a gold seal pressed into the back. She opened it on the elevator ride up. Inside was a legal settlement. Not from Liam, not from the court, but clearly designed by someone who knew what buttons to press. $3 million. No trial. No custody hearing. No media involvement. All she had to do was vanish. Leave New York. Sign away maternal rights. Never mention Liam. Never mention River. And never show her face again. No one had signed it. But she didn't need a signature. She recognized Halstead's fingerprints in the wording. This wasn't a settlement. It was a silencing. She didn't tell Liam right away. She left the envelope on the center of the kitchen table and waited, arms folded, breath tight. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking, not from fear, but fury, the kind that hardens after years of being ignored. When he came home late that evening, he saw it immediately. He picked it up, thumbed through the contents, then set it down like it smelled of poison. "They're scared," he muttered. "Of what?" she asked. "That I chose you," he said. "That the narrative's broken. That you stayed." She leaned forward, hands braced on the edge of the table. "They think I'll take it." Liam looked at her. "Would you?" It wasn't a trap, just a truth. She laughed bitterly. "I once considered stealing diapers from a pharmacy just so he wouldn't sleep in wet ones. I stood in line for soup with him tied to my chest. There was a time when 3 million would have looked like a ladder to heaven." She stepped closer now. "But I'm not that girl anymore." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I won't be bought back into silence." Liam stared at her, then nodded. Good, because silence, he'd learned, was just another weapon. That night, he posted another photo, another message. No PR team, no spin, just a truth the world couldn't scroll past. They tried to pay her off, to erase a mother, to buy silence. "We're not selling." Liam Strathmore. Underneath, it was a candid photo. Raya asleep on the couch. River curled on her chest, his small fingers clutched in her sweater. Her face, exhausted, unguarded, utterly human. It wasn't a power move. It was a portrait of who this fight was really for. The next morning, another envelope arrived. No courier, just slipped beneath the door. This one was smaller, heavier. Inside was no offer. Only a single sheet of paper, handwritten in cold, all caps ink. "This is your last chance. After this, we come for everything." No return address, no signature, no stamp, but the threat pulsed off the page like heat from a fire. Raya stared at it. Her knuckles turned white. Her heart kicked like a warning bell. She didn't flinch. She walked to the sink, tore it slowly, one line at a time, into 6 uneven pieces, then dropped them into the garbage disposal and hit the switch. It churned loudly, violently, then quieted. And just like that, the threat was gone. But her resolve? Unshakable. They could throw money. They could weaponize lawyers. They could try to erase her like a stain. But she had River. She had truth. And she had a name now, one the whole world had finally heard. The courtroom was quieter than she expected. Raya had imagined noise, shuffling, murmurs, camera flashes beyond the hall doors. But what filled the air was something colder than silence. Anticipation. A judge with silver hair sat high behind a curved mahogany bench, his expression unreadable, his posture precise. Beneath him, a table of city-appointed lawyers, another for Liam and Raya's team. And in the third row sat the governor, Charles Halstead, arms crossed, his sharp as the pen he used to sign Raya out of existence. He hadn't been summoned. He didn't need to be. His presence was a warning. Liam sat beside Raya, unmoving. He wore no tie, no mask, just the expression of a man who had nothing left to hide and nothing left to lose but the 2 people in the room he loved most. River was home with a sitter, safe, far from this. But in every word spoken today, his future was on trial. The first 40 minutes were brutal. The governor's affiliated firm launched their strategy like a well-rehearsed performance, weaving Raya's shelter history, her brief medical record, and her lack of employment into a profile of unstable but sympathetic. A woman who meant well, but wasn't built to raise a child long-term. They played it clean, but the damage was there. A picture being painted one stroke at a time. Raya's hands trembled in her lap, but she didn't blink. She didn't cry. She watched and waited. Then came their witness, and the room changed. Because it wasn't a social worker. It wasn't a doctor. It was a man in a gray suit, bald, middle-aged, with downturned eyes and a courthouse badge clipped to his belt. And when he took the stand and gave his name, Liam sat up straighter. Julian Cray, former assistant to Liam Strathmore. Gatekeeper. Fixer. Eraser. Raya felt her pulse surge. Liam leaned forward, his voice a whisper. He came. The opposing lawyer adjusted his mic. Mr. Cray, you worked for Mr. Strathmore for nearly 9 years? Yes. And you were responsible for filtering personal communication during his engagement to Camille Halstead? Julian paused, then nodded. I was. Do you recall intercepting a message from a woman named Raya Varon? Silence. Then, softly. Yes. The room shifted. Paper stopped rustling. Pins froze. Can you explain why you withheld that message? Julian looked at Liam, then at Raya, then at the governor, and finally back to the judge. I was instructed, he said, not by Mr. Strathmore, but by a third party, Governor Halstead's office. The language was clear. Any attempt by Ms. Varon to contact Liam was to be dismissed as emotional manipulation. Gasps rippled behind them. The judge banged the gavel once. Order. But it was too late. The lie had cracked, and now it was bleeding. Julian continued. I regret it. I believed what I was told, that it was for Liam's protection. I didn't know there was a child. I didn't know what was being covered up. I do now. The courtroom stilled again. Raya stared at him, chest rising slowly. She wasn't sure whether to thank him or curse him, but one thing was clear. The truth had finally spoken. Later, in the hallway outside the courtroom, Liam turned to Raya. We still have to finish this. But after what Julian said, they're exposed. Raya shook her head. That won't stop them. No, Liam said. But now we're not the ones playing defense. She leaned against the wall, closed her eyes. I never thought anyone would stand up. You did. She opened her eyes. What? You stood up, Liam said. At my wedding. Alone. You stood up and told the truth, even when it cost you everything. Raya's eyes glistened. And what if I lose him anyway? You won't, he said. Not this time. Behind them, the city buzzed. But in this hallway, in this moment, two people who'd once lost everything were finally standing on the side that could not be bought and wouldn't be silenced again. The courtroom was tense as the judge returned to the bench. Everyone stood, even the governor, especially him. Raya's heart pounded so loud she could barely hear the clerk read the preamble. Liam's hand brushed against hers under the table, not gripping, just there, grounding her. The judge's voice was low, deliberate, and final. The court finds sufficient grounds to establish joint custody between Ms. Varon and Mr. Strathmore, with full parental recognition for both parties. Any attempts by third parties to interfere with custody arrangements will be considered contempt. It was done. Just like that. River was theirs. Fully. No more shadows. No more whispers. No more disappearing letters in silence pretending to be protection. Raya didn't cry. She just exhaled. A long, slow breath that emptied out the weight of 3 years in one motion. Next to her, Liam closed his eyes. One shoulder dipped. A lifetime of guilt, falling off. The judge stood and left. So did the press. So did the lawyers. But Raya stayed frozen in place, not because she was overwhelmed, but because Camille Halstead was walking toward her. Alone. No press. No entourage. Just a woman whose crown had shattered a long time ago, and who had learned how to walk without it. Raya stood slowly. Camille didn't smile, but she didn't look angry either. I'm not here to fight, she said softly. Good, Raya said, because I don't have anything left to swing with. They stood silently for a beat, two women connected by a man neither of them would ever see the same way again. You destroyed my wedding, Camille said. You buried my child. Camille nodded. Fair. Raya's breath caught. Why are you here? Because I hated you, Camille said. For a long time. And I needed to see you. Not in headlines. Not in photos. I needed to see the woman who stood up at the altar and cracked open a world no one wanted to see. Raya didn't respond. Camille's voice dropped. He was never fully mine, you know. Liam. Even before that day. There was always this space inside him. I thought it was business. Turns out, it was you. Silence. Not cruel. Not cold. Just full. Camille stepped closer. Whatever happens between you two now, don't waste it proving anything. You've already done that. Raya blinked. Why are you really here, Camille? She finally smiled. Faint. Tired. Real. To tell you I'm not the villain in your story. And you're not the ghost in mine. Then she turned, walked down the marble corridor, heels echoing softly behind her. And for the first time, it felt like closure. Not pretty, not polished, but honest. Outside the courthouse, the sky was a heavy gold, sun slipping beneath rooftops, casting everything in a last-light warmth. River ran ahead on the steps, holding Liam's hand as he tugged toward a vendor cart for a popsicle he'd spotted from 2 blocks away. Raya followed behind them, arms folded, not guarding, just watching. Liam turned back to her, smiling. "Still feel like running?" he asked. She shrugged. "Less than usual." They walked in silence. Not because there was nothing to say, but because, for once, there was nothing to fix. No scandal to clean. No secrets to bury. Just a man, a woman, and the boy who made them both bigger than their pasts. That night, River fell asleep with popsicle stains on his cheeks and both their hands resting near his pillow. Raya watched him for a long time. Liam leaned in the doorway. "You ever think," he asked, "that we survived too much?" She looked at him. "We didn't survive. We chose not to disappear." He nodded slowly. "You think that's enough?" She reached for his hand. "No," she whispered. "But it's finally a beginning." And together, in the quiet space between regret and redemption, they began again.